Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back once again. My name is Jordan, also known as JMonster, and I want to thank you guys for joining me for another replay battle. Today we're going to be playing some more Silmarillion Total War as our alpha marches on. We've added a new faction to the build. This is the second of the 2 orc factions that will be available in Silmarillion, and they're pretty unique. A lot of the assets, I think, are going to be things that you've seen before, but in terms of the way that this faction works, especially relative to Angband, who's all about them monsters and heavy infantry, they do stand out, and they are actually quite a lot of fun to play. I had some chance to really mess around with them today with our testers. So, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce you all to the faction of Tol-in-Gaurhoth, a faction I had a ton of fun developing. There was very little about Sauron's armed forces in Tol-in-Gaurhoth and the forces that he took it with, so I got kind of my pick of what direction I wanted to take this faction in. So it's a lot of light infantry, a lot of medium infantry. They do have some heavy infantry backbones to their line, and they are quite useful support units. They do give some small morale buffs, which is something that Tol-in-Gaurhoth doesn't really have a lot of. They don't have any major morale buffing units, but they do have swarms of infantry. Some of them are locked morale, some of them have decent morale like their backbone units and can buff the morale of units nearby. So it's a cool faction, a little bit more lightly armored, very reliant on their wargs, however, which is something that you're going to be seeing a lot of in this battle. So the map you have out before us here is called the Skarahai War Camp, or maybe just camp. And it was created by one of our testers, Steward of Dale, so big thank you to him. And I'll tell you a little bit more about Tol-in-Gaurhoth as we go along through here. So they are composed of 4 different clans, and there's a lot of black speech in their names, as they are run by Sauron, and I kind of wanted to have that connection to him in the Third Age. I know it's an anachronism, and that black speech wasn't something that he created until many thousands of years later. However, I think it's pretty cool, helps them stand out, and it gives them some really cool naming conventions, and I built their faction lore into this. So there's 4 clans of what they call Gulkala, which is, there wasn't a direct translation for Tol-in-Gaurhoth, not the one that I could find with the Blackspeak dictionaries that I had online, so I made one up. It's called Gulkala the Witch Fort. Sauron was a well-known sorcerer, and you're going to see some of his magical influence in the battle here today, and that's going to be reflected. It's also reflected in the story too. So there's a lot of like very rich flavor, I feel, to this faction, and that's drawn from the story, and some of it is just drawn from my imagination. So there's 4 clans. They all have very specific roles in the battlefield, and they all have some very strange aesthetic and cultural quirks about them. So we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through. So here we have the Gijak Skaraz Chosen, which is, from what I remember, Gijak Skaraz, I think it's like the Wolfborn or something like that, or something very close to that. I really should know the names of my own clans in English, but yeah, there it is. I know the other ones better. But yeah, the Gijak Skaraz, they're like the warrior elite of Tol-in-Gaurhoth. Very few in number. You've probably noticed they're a little bit smaller than the Angband high-tier infantry, which tends to weigh in at about 160 men. These guys, however, don't have the same kind of armor, but they do have good shield value, good, pretty decent, I would say, melee defense, and better armor than most of the rest of the roster. And of course, they inspire nearby units around them, so they are quite useful for holding the line and for keeping the rest of the clan in check. Over here we have the Hishburkraz. Hishburkraz in English means Ashclaw. And the Ashclaws are fire-obsessed maniacs. They actually cover themselves in the ashes of their prisoners, who they burn in terrible ritualistic sacrifices. And that gives them that sort of dun, ashen color that you're going to see on a lot of these units. Many of them have the gray kind of leather and the white fur and things like that. And that's kind of to reflect the fact that they are actually soot and ash-covered monsters. Hishburkraz Warband, very similar to the Orc Band, in fact. Expendable spearmen. They are, however, very, very useful against cavalry. In Silmarillion Total War, I have specialized weapon types a little bit further, taking it to the next step. So spears, even low-tier spears like this, are very, very useful against cavalry units. They can be useful as a screen, but they are even further reduced against infantry. So spears a little bit more specialized, excellent at holding the line, excellent at zoning out cavalry. Altogether, it gives them a very strong niche as frontline units, but not necessarily the killing power of the army. And behind them, we have, I think I have 3 units. 3, yes indeed, 3 or 4 units of the Hishbukraz Howlers. These guys are insane fanatics. They rush at the enemy as quickly as possible, get stuck in, and they will fight to the last man. These units are locked morale. They're very lightly armored. They have no shields. They've got pretty decent attack value, and their stamina is very low as well. But they make an excellent tar pit, and you can bring them in very large numbers and tie up your enemy's front line, tie up their units on the back line if you're able to outflank them. Altogether, a very useful unit, and it really does come down to the lock morale. In our third line here, we have the Skada High. The Skada High compose the medium infantry units of the Dominion of Tol-in-Gaurhoth. In the story, there is mention, I should say, of vampires, and folklore is kind of a funny thing. So a vampire may start out as, one person who has certain sanguinary inclinations, shall we say. Maybe they just have an extreme bloodlust, maybe they actually drink blood, but throughout time that gets distorted into something else, and then maybe they become like the vampires of myth and legend, these smooth, suave aristocrats hiding up in their dark towers and preying on townspeople. These guys are kind of that. The Skada High clan, they love to drink and adorn themselves in the blood of their enemies. Think Khorne from the Warhammer universe. They are very much like that. Medium infantry, decent armor values, little bit better melee defense than the Hishbukraz, and their armor is of course a little bit higher as well. And I'm going to have 3 units here of the Skada High Longfangs. They are axe infantry. Axe infantry take a pretty high penalty to their melee defense. However, when I'm doing their stats, they always roll up on attack, and they get an extra 25% additive charge bonus to their overall value. So they're not exactly shock troops in the sense that shock troops have much stronger values when it comes to attack and charge, but they do kind of blend a little bit of the shock flavor into a regular sword, not exactly sword, but sword and board unit. So they do have a nice balance there. And then over here, we have some of the nasty warg units. We have the Thrang Sheik Wolfborn. These are the chieftains and the smallest of the 4 clans of Gulkala. They are the warrior chiefs. They rule the 4 clans with an iron fist, and they answer to nobody but Sauron. And now Sauron will be included in this faction eventually. We need to get some new animations and stuff for him so that it's a little bit more stable and he doesn't cause crashing. But he will be added to the Tol-in-Gaurhoth faction eventually, but he's not in it yet, so you're not going to see him. Off to the side here, we have the Gijak Skara za Gulkala, again being the Witchford, the orc's name for Tol-in-Gaurhoth. Heavily armored melee cavalry. They have really good bonuses against all types of cavalry, including elephants, so that you can use them to hunt down some of the larger units in the game in the event that you're playing against an Ang player. Then you're not completely at their mercy. But they're very tanky. Everything you'd expect to have out of a heavy cavalry unit of wargs. A little bit lower in number, as they do take a penalty to their number. Instead of 60, they're going to have 50. Then we have some more Skada High units over here. The Skada High Trappers are a javelin unit. And afterwards, they're actually pretty decent melee infantry. They're very similar in terms of their melee stats to the Skada High Longfangs, except for the fact that they do not have their 5 shield value, and they have an extra melee defense. So they're just a little bit better in the melee defense department, but obviously much more susceptible to arrows. And they have their armor-piercing javelins that they can throw. Over here, we have the Gijak Skada's Wolfguard, armor-piercing infantry. These guys are macemen, an excellent answer to many of the heavy infantry units fielded by the Noldor of Hithlum and Nargothrond. Absolutely essential, and we're going to be playing against the Sons of Feyenoord today, which is exactly why I brought them. Over here, we have some more Hishbukraz Howlers, and then a unit of Hishbukraz Zagulkalab. These guys have a very special projectile, and this is a little bit of the sorceress influence that I spoke about earlier in relation to Sauron. During the Siege of Minas Tirith, it wasn't uncommon for the orcs to have this uncanny method of building fire, and when they would when they would fire their catapults over the walls of Minas Tirith, they would explode in this kind of sorceress, almost napalm-like explosion. So that's what you're going to see here. This is perhaps an early experiment of Sauron's with that kind of incendiary technology. So when they throw their javelins, it's just big fire bolts, and they leave behind a burning area as well, which can potentially do damage to units that walk through it. They've only got about 3 or so ammunition, and they are extremely susceptible to arrow fire, as it's important to note that wargs in this only have a single hit point instead of the 2 HP that you're used to in Reforged. However, the Dominion of Tol-in-Gaurhoth makes up for that with some really high numbers of both their war cavalry and their infantry as well, which can draw a little bit of fire. Another company of Hishburkraz Zagulkalab, and then I've got some Gijak Skaras Zagulkalab here as well. Although ultimately I will end up bringing another unit of my Howlers over here and a second company of my Gijak Skaras, and we're going to use them to try and outflank the Sons of Feyenoord position. But for the time being, let's pop across the field here and take a look at the army of my ally. Here we have another army from Tol-in-Gaurhoth being played by DT Ritchie. He's brought some Gijak Skaras Chosen, some Wolf Guard here for him as well, a front line of Longfangs. He's gone for a little bit more of a quality approach, as we're all still learning the faction, so we're just trying out different potential strategies. Another company of Chosen over here on the wing. More Wolf Guard, more Trappers, yet more Trappers. He's got some Thrangshik Wolfborn in the center there, and a Mangonel as well. Now, the Mangonel is on loan from the army of Angband, as the Orcs of Gulkala are a little bit less technologically advanced, as I'm sure you've noticed, than the more professional, more heavily armored units of the realm of Angband. And so the more advanced pieces of technology, like the Mangonel and their other siege equipment, will be crewed by the Orcs of Angband. So they're kind of on loan from Sauron's master farther up north. And one thing to note here about the artillery crews, and this is something that I want to talk a little bit about in this battle, and you're probably going to see it with the smaller unit sizes, is that we've decided to implement a detachment system. And the way that works is you can pay half price for a half strength unit of your choosing. So if you have a certain amount of money left over and you don't just want to spend it on boring things like manually clicking every single unit to give them more attack or more defense or whatever, you can actually buy a half-strength unit. So maybe you can't afford a full one, or maybe you're trying to save a little bit money to help you squeeze something else into your composition without necessarily sacrificing entirely an element of your army. That is an option that you have available to you. And so each one of the orcish artillery pieces is crewed by a detachment. These are essentially a detachment of the Iron Shod crossbows, except they don't have their crossbows, so their melee stats are identical, and their armor stats, etc., as well, but they are a detachment, so that's why it's so large. That's just part and parcel for the new system that we've just implemented. And I think that's pretty well it. It's a smaller army, a little bit more quality focused, but now that we've taken a look at the Tol-in-Gaurhoth faction and learned a little bit about them, let's go ahead and see what our opponents are bringing to the battle today. And so, across the field from myself, we have a familiar face. This is the House of Feyenoord, being commanded by DT Secretariat. Now, he's gone for an interesting build. He's got a lot of cavalry, naturally, but he has also gone quite heavy onto his skirmish line as well, which is not something that I've seen very often in our replays coming out of the alpha, but this map and this more defensive position here does kind of lend itself well to that, and the Huntsmen of Thargelion, armed with their two-handed spears, are an excellent pick to take against the clans of Gulkala, as they have so many wargs, and these guys are cheap and fairly easily sacrificable unit of two-handed spearmen that you're going to want to go after. I mean, they are archers, and they have two-handed spears in close quarters as well, so they're everything that the warg units of Tol-in-Gaurhoth can fear, and they've got some good numbers here as well. Out in front, 2 units of archers of Amrod. I haven't seen too many people bring these guys as well, as they tend to, well, mostly we've had the Sons of Feyenoord facing off against Angband, and their usefulness is fairly limited against them. However, against the lightly armored forces of Tol-in-Gaurhoth, it's not a terrible pick to have. Front line here with 3 companies of the footmen of Amaras, fairly standard. Another company of, actually no, it's a different one. So here we have a detachment of the Stalkers of Thargelion, half-strength unit, These guys are armor-piercing in close quarters, and they also have a javelin, which is not armor-piercing. But because of its 5 damage, it does make it useful against medium and light infantry, which is predominantly what my army is composed of. Another company here of the Huntsmen of Thargelion, and then a whole bunch of Edain. 3 companies here of the Shield Bearers of Hellevorn. And I think... nope, he's got some cavalry here as well. So 1 company of the Roqueni Magloro, the Knight unit for Tol-in-Gaurhoth, the Sons of Feyenoord. 2 companies here of Mounted Company of Kurufin. Actually, 3 companies. What do you know? And then a detachment as well of the Mounted Company of Kurufin, which is a good pick to have. Against the Wargs, they are pretty good. The Lancers as well. In Silmarillion Total War, Lancers do have a bonus against Wargs. So the Sons of Feyenoord have a ton of options here. Melee Cavalry is just a nice traditional pick. These guys have really good melee defense. A little bit less armor than the Lancer units, but they do cost less, and they do come with their Javelin as well. They've got a little bit extra numbers. So there is a pick there. You're basically choosing between numbers and a higher bonus against Wargs. Oh, pardon me. Still a little bit sick. And I believe that's everything for the Sons of Feyenoord, unless he's got some more Thargelion stalkers hidden in the back here, and he very well might. I'm sure we'll see as the battle moves on. Let's move over here and take a look at the Green Elves of Assyrian. Now, I know for a fact that he does have a unit of the Randirem and Tol-Galen, which is the only ranger unit available in Silmarillion Total War. The Elves of Assyrian, the kind of magnum opus, I guess, of the gold standard of ranged factions, has the only body-piercing ranger in the game, and they've also got some Scouts of Gelion up here as well, which is a light archer, which fights with daggers in close combat, so they've got low base damage, but they're armor-piercing and really high melee defense as well. Front line here, it's actually going to be hard to kind of gauge the strength of a Assyrian army because they have so many units that can hide. It's a very, very strong ambush faction. Steward of Dale, who's commanding them today, has opted to take something a little bit more frontal, I think. So he's got 3 units here of the Spear Host of Rathloriel, and they're going to be forming his front line. I know he's got some other hidden units in the back. They have access to Ents and some Erfinen Tower, and he's got a detachment here of the Erfinen Tower, save a little bit of money. They are a 2-handed axe unit, which is armor-piercing in close quarters. Predominantly, they are a shock infantry unit, although they do have some really high damage, but limited ammunition arrows that they can use. And he's got a full-strength unit of them over here. In behind, he's got the bodyguard unit, the Maithran and Tol-Galen. There may be another unit of them around here somewhere, but this is his general's bodyguard, and they're a maceman unit. So a little bit, actually the most heavily armored unit that the Elves of Assyrian can field. They are extremely expensive, however, as the heavy infantry for Assyrian, who does not specialize in them at all, and that's also where all of their armor piercing is going to be located as well, have to pay extra, pardon me, for their heavy infantry. I'm pretty sure he's got some Hunters of Rathloriel hiding out in here, which is a Javelin Spear hybrid, but we'll just have to see what the Elves of Assyrian are going to bring to the table as the battle goes on. As, like I said, they like to hide, and ambushes are something that they are quite adept at. So without any further ado, let's go ahead, jump into the battle. I hope you guys enjoy. So right off the bat, the artillery piece here of Richie's Tol-in-Gaurhoth army is going to open fire on the Green Elf position. And you can see them repositioning here, looking to take up a defensive position in between the arms of the pass of this... ooh, nasty. Look at that thing. Melting people. Oh, it was so close. Fried everybody in front of his general. That is a nasty, nasty thing indeed. And his general's going to touch the fire and then cook himself. And so in the first shot, just total blind luck, the Elves of Assyrian are going to lose their general, and they're going to lose a bunch of units out of their Hunters of Rathloriel, who are forming up on the second line here. Secretariat is sending a ton of reinforcements over to help out Steward. We're going to go ahead and slow it down here as a lot happens all at once, and it looks like the Green Elves have some hidden cavalry here as well. 2 companies of the sentries of Gelion, and they're going to go after a hidden company here of the Laugskaraz Zagulkalab, the lightly armored but medium tier unit of Wargs. They've got 6 armor, so it's a little bit better than their dismounted counterparts, but they don't have a shield, and they're not really fast enough, I think, to escape from these archers. So Steward of Dale saw this right away, and he's going to make sure that his enemy is punished as he drives them back across the field and back towards the safety of their position. Over on my side, I'm going to start to move forward towards the lines of the Sons of Feyenoord. I want to get stuck in with my Hishburgras Howlers as quickly as I possibly can. Now, I know the Sons of Feyenoord have some cavalry somewhere, and I didn't see them run off immediately. So I'm going to keep my spear units here, my Hishburgras Warband in reserve. I'm going to move up with some Gijek Skaras chosen, try and draw some of the fire of these units as I move into position with my lightly armored shock troops. You can see just a ton of Howlers rushing forward, eager for blood. They want to get in there and feast on that elf flesh. And over on this side, I'm having a little bit more success with my flanking attack than my ally over on his side. I've got my Hishburgras Howlers bringing up the rear as they're not really swift enough to keep up with 3 units of cavalry. I got some Hishburgras Zagul-Kalab and 2 companies of my Gijek Skaras Wargs backing them up as well. And I'm trying to time this such that when my front line, like the units that I actually care about, my Skadahai and my Wolfguard, by the time my main front line gets there and engages with the enemy and pushes them out of position and into something a little bit more static, that I'll be able to jump in with my wargs at the same time and just keep Secretariat really, really busy. Over on the other side, with the loss of the Green Elf General, I think that has emboldened my ally here, Rich, and he wants to take to the offensive right away. Now, over on this side, you can see there's a lot of cavalry here from Secretariat, and this is a danger if they decide to come around the back. And that's actually what Steward of Dale is doing with the unit of his Sentries of Gelion here. Very accurate, very deadly horse archers, but very, very lightly armored, and they're absolutely garbage in melee. So if they get caught by anything, they will be very, very quickly cut down. And it looks like that's exactly what Richie wants to do here. I think he's seen these guys moving forward, but so has Steward of Dale also seen the danger that these guys are posing. And so they're going to easily scoot away, firing off a volley in return, and it's going to be ugly for the Laugskaraz Zagul-Kalab. They had a chance if Steward was just moving this unit heedlessly forward and he was going to be able to catch them out, but chasing them like this, it's not going to do much for him. As those are they sentries? I don't know. The Gelion horse archers, I can't quite remember all the names, I'm still getting used to them, are a good deal faster than his wargs. Spear host of Rathloriel, not in a good position. You can see, ooh, got some blood drinkers of the Skadahai here as well. Shock troops, AP shock troops, charging in here. Some hidden spear host of Gelion getting caught out by the Skadahai blood drinkers, and they will massacre their way through these guys. These guys are little more than a meat shield, but you can see the Rangers have popped out. Oh, no, they haven't come out quite yet. The Scouts of Gelion lending a little bit of aid to Secretariat. They're in a really good position to do so up on this hill, and I'm slowly moving in and beginning my offensive as well. You can see I've run the Footman of Amrod out of position, and now my front line is closing in on his, and then I've got my Hishburgras Zagul-Kalab here as well. And now we get to see that beautiful fire projectile in action. I've come to kind of pepper down the rear of these guys. I'm going to draw them out of position, and there it is. There's that fire. Some of the units it's going to knock over, very disruptive. Some of them it's going to kill. It's going to leave behind that little bit of fire as well, and you can see that it does damage people when they try to walk through it. Secretariat's going to return fire with his Stalkers of Thargelion. Their presence here does complicate things somewhat, as my Gijek Skaras Zagul-Kalab need to steer well clear of them, and I really want to get at the Archers of Amrod, but there are some reserves back here, and spear reserves as well. They're going to complicate that somewhat. My front line, so far, is really struggling. And they're not going to do well against the Footmen of Amoras, so that's not really what they're here to do. They're here to tire them out, inflict some light casualties. Ooh, a couple companies of Defenders of Agalon as well, heavy shock troops. Very nasty. That's going to be a tough thing to try and cut my way through. Over on this side, the Green Elves are very hard-pressed. The numbers of the Skadahai and the Wolf Guard have been brought to bear against them, and their spearmen are just getting hammered right now. Over here, some success where the Mythern and Tolgalen were committed alongside the Spear Host, and some support from the Sentries of Gelion. They managed to rout a battalion of Skadahai, and that's going to leave them wide open here. The Skadahai trappers doing their best to inflict some casualties on the Green Elves as they move forward, but that breakthrough is going to allow this wing over here to be surrounded. So, where he was winning very strongly earlier, now unfortunately, because of his more quality-heavy approach, he does not have the numbers to plug this gap, and that is obviously not very good for him. Big punch up here between the Wargs and the Mounted Company, a very, very strong amount of Mounted Company of Crewfin, several hundred of them in there at least. Sentries of Gelion have managed to drive back the Laugskaraz that we saw earlier, probably with the help of the Roqueni Magloro. Not looking great for my ally, but over on my side, things are going a little bit better. I've managed to get in to the rear here. The Footmen of Amras I've drawn out of position. My Hishbukraz Gulkalab opening fire on these engaged units, and now moving in with my Wolf Guard. My Wolf Guard are definitely a threat to the Footmen of Amras with their armor piercing and all that other nasty stuff. Fortunately, I got these guys a little bit too close, and they are going to get jumped on. There's some two-handed spearmen coming in from the rear as well, along with some reinforcements. So a bit of a waste here. I'm not used to juggling this much cavalry, so it is kind of something that I do struggle with. But I'm going to try and get a little bit better at it and play some more Tol-in-Gaurhoth. My Gijak Skada is unfortunately very idle back here. I've got another company of my Gijak Skadas going against the Urfanen Tower, and at the same time my ally is coming in with his own Gijak Skadas, and he's going to rout a company of Hunters of Wrath L'Oreal. The Green Elves are going to try and block me, and they're going to be successful at that, because unfortunately I lost my crown, my troops here. Tol-in-Gaurhoth, definitely not for beginners, and I still have a lot to learn about playing my own mod. Over here, my Thrangshik Wolfborn, unfortunately getting embroiled in a fight with some two-handed spearmen, which is not at all where they want to be. But on the infantry fight, I am holding him back. Coming in waves, got my Skada High Longfangs here, fighting against the defenders of Aglon. And the front line, my Wolf Guard have joined the fray. I've got lots of troops here pushing in on the wings. I've got my own cavalry in the back. I'm doing my best. I'm certainly doing a number on his front line. I'm coming in with my Skada High Longfangs as well. We've got my trappers in here, and they're going to be able to lay down some supporting fire. Another company of Howlers. Yet another company of Howlers that has finally made it into here, so some late to the battle reinforcements going to be put to good use. My trappers over here having some pathfinding issues in the camp. That's okay, though. Another company of my Hishbukraz laying down some supporting fire into the Stalkers of Thargelion here, and unfortunately a lot of my Wolf Guard are going to get surrounded on all sides. And some of the Huntsmen and the Stalkers are going to be able to catch them. I'm going to pull out of there, go with my Thrangshik Wolfborn towards the Scouts of Gelion. That's going to be an ugly thing for them. Over here at Randirmen Tolgalen, this is a big threat. We've managed to rout through the Spear Host of Gelion. Now this should be my next big target. I want to get in there with my Wargs and try and shut them down as quickly as possible. With the help of my Hishbukraz, we've managed to get a bit of a breakthrough here. So a couple small units here of Skada High Blood Drinkers. Looks like they're really taken to town, to Pound Town, by the Randirmen Tolgalen, but now they have been caught out. More and more troops pouring in. Got some Wolf Guard here engaging against the Erfenen Tower, who are a little bit understrength now. And this is really just poor play on my part. Unfortunately, the Hunters of Wrath L'Oreal managed to catch my Gijak Skadas, and they're having a bad time. Over here, a lot of the cavalry from Secretariat and from the Green Elves as well, moving back in my direction, as they have managed to deal a pretty astounding defeat to the Wargs of Tol-in-Gaurhoth, although heavy losses on both sides. But I think part of that has to do with some Chosen that were thrown in support here against the Ents, along with more Blood Drinkers. So it looks like there was 3 companies of Blood Drinkers in total, which unfortunately I missed earlier on. Laugskaraz Gulkalab still in good shape. 2 companies of them here, and some of the cavalry from Secretariat has actually been routed off. But still, it's kind of in the balance. I think that the Green Elves have this. Most of Richie's infantry seems to have been routed off, except for some of the troops that managed to make their way in behind here. And I'm going to do my best to give them what support I can. But I certainly have my own problems. Oop, and there goes Richie's general, and that's going to spell disaster for his few remaining troops. He definitely wanted to keep his general intact. The defenders of Aglon pushing my wing really hard, cutting through my Skara High Longfangs. In the center, the Footmen of Amras are still holding their ground, although my Wolf Guard have certainly helped out. And now I've managed to get around his wing with a very large number of my medium infantry. Got my Wargs in the back here, going after the Archers of Amrod. Just keeping Secretariat as busy as I possibly can. Another company of Hishbukraz Howlers coming around the flank here, circumventing his position. I've got more Howlers, and some warband in support here as well, and then my trappers are, of course, still on my second line. So it's a bitter struggle here, although it is one that I am slowly winning through sheer weight of numbers. Ooh, my Gijek Skadas Gulkalab getting out of there as quickly as possible, now that the Shield Bearers of Hellborn and the Hunters of Thargelion have joined the fight. Looks like some more routing here. The Skadahai Blood-Drinkers being pushed back. The Chosen fighting uphill against the Randir Mentolgalen. They'll win eventually, but not, of course, unless something like this happens. Sentries of Gelion charging into the rear. They don't exactly have amazing charge values, but rear charges from cavalry, it hurts. And you can see a lot of those Gijek Skadas beginning to fall. And with the loss of their general and being surrounded and charged in the rear, this might be enough to rout them. I'm coming in with some of my Hishbukras, trying to get a piece of these sentries, support my ally as best as I'm able, but they're also under fire by the scouts of Gelion. Although now that both sides have joined in close quarters, he's going to be getting a lot of friendly fire there. Some hunters have managed to rout these guys off. Still some cavalry left over. It looks like they're going after the Earthen Tower, getting a nice rear charge here. Pardon me. A charge from these guys will actually be enough to hurt these Earthen Tower, as they do have quite low melee defense, being an axe unit. Over here, I've got my own wargs engaged with some sentries of Gelion, but hunters of Rathloriel are nearby as well, so I am going to be obliged to retreat eventually. Looks like the Green Elves over on their right wing are regrouping. Well, Secretariat is trying to cut down some of the few remaining infantrymen from Richie. He does still have a force over here, but it is not at all substantial, and the Green Elves are having a chance to regroup. And once they're done, once they finish eliminating pockets of Richie's resistance, they will round on me, and this is something I'm very much aware of. So over on this wing, the Elven Infantry holding fast, although now I've begun to bring my wargs against them. I've got some fodder units here to keep the spear units that were giving me trouble before with my cavalry busy. And I've got some more reinforcements here forming up on my line. I'm going to throw them in to try and plug this gap here so that my forces on my wings don't get themselves surrounded. And I think my Skadahai trappers are now freshly out of ammunition, so I'm going to be able to throw them in as a third line as well. Up here, the defenders of Aglon, very light casualties as they've hacked their way through my battalions of Skadahai. We've got some more trappers coming back this way, more units that I'm throwing in just to give myself a little bit of weight of numbers. My Chosen have done excellent against the Shield Bearers. It says they're both winning. I don't know who's going to win. They do certainly have the numbers on the Sons of Feyenoord side, which is never good for an Orcish faction. Nice rear charge here into the Archers of Amaras, or the Archers of Amarod, and the Footmen of Amaras. It's going to hurt. There's going to be some friendly fire here as well. Those archers are actually going to break there. The Footmen of Amaras are shaken as well, so I'm starting to make headway here on the flank. Some rear charges with some of my my warg units here, trying to prevent this next volley. Unfortunately, it goes off anyway. I've brought my own Thrangshik Wolfborn here, who have been in some heavy fighting over on this side. Richie's still holding on, but only just barely. So I've decided to pull my cavalry out of there and to try and win my fight on my side, and then regroup and try and crush what remains of the Elves of Assyriant. Yeah, they're still firing into my troops, but the Gijek Skadas at least are well armored enough that they'll be able to stand up to those volleys fairly well. A nice rear charge here into the defenders of Aglon. Secretariat's going to see it, and he's going to turn around. It's not going to do a ton, but they're not going to get enough momentum to really get a charge off, and my forces will. So some of them will fall there from the momentum of that charge. Where are my Thrangshik Wolfborn? That's where the real party's going to be. Yes, here they are. I'm trying to bring them over to this wing and then try and finish these guys off. I notice that they're shaken, so I'll just turn up the speed a little bit here, and I'm going to throw them at that wing in just a moment. But let's pop over to the other side. We can see that the Mangonel crew is really all that's left here. Some Skadahai Longfangs, a few routing cavalry, but Secretariat still has much of his cavalry still available, and the Elves of Assyrian are very, very bloodied at this point, but nonetheless, they are still a functional faction. You can see them bringing a ton of their reinforcements units over here, routing off the Gijek Skadas Chosen. Now, a lot of these are like lower mid-tier units, mostly fodder. If I can surround them and get some rear charges without their general, they may very well break en masse. Many of them are getting tired after all of the maneuvering and the fighting that they've been doing, but still, this is a very, very serious threat. Nonetheless, a lot of light infantry, it is something that I can deal with, but this is the really big scary part. There's a lot of the Roqueni Magloro still left over. 25, it's a full unit, and that's my biggest concern. So my Thrangsheik Wolfborn here, rear charging. These footmen of Amras, they're very tired. I'm throwing in some more reinforcements, and that charge is going to be enough to rout these guys. And I'm going to surge forward with my units, break these lines, and then try and carry through with my momentum and rout the rest of Secretariat's force in quick order. A lot of these guys are dying off, getting run down by my wargs or chased down by my infantry. You can see these guys are very nearly at the point of breaking as well. Now my Hishbukraz Howlers are all exhausted. They're good enough to keep these guys busy. Randir, I'm out of ammunition, thank goodness. But I'm going to surge through. I'm going to try and keep these guys moving. But unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to run them all down, and that's going to become important later. Now, I've got my Thrangsheik Wolfborn. I'm trying to rout off what remains of Secretariat's right wing and carry through with my Skarahai and my Gijek Skaraz units. But I'm going to run smack into a wave of Assyrian reinforcements. Now, I'm going to manage to rout off what remains of the defenders of Aglon and the shield bearers of Helivorn. My troops are unfortunately going to run smack into a wave of green elves. They are very nearly at the point of breaking, however, and a quick charge is going to see them off as well, and that's the effect of not having their general. But unfortunately, all of these troops are going to escape destruction, and some of them are going to begin to reform, and this is going to form another wave of reinforcements that I unfortunately will not be able to handle. Certainly not easily. And now my own troops are beginning to waver and break off. You can see some massive routing here as my exhausted troops break off the fight. I've still got some units in the fray, running down what remains of those green elves, trying to present a united front here against the sudden influx of Assyrian reinforcements. Got some Skarahai trappers charging in against this blob. I'm going to move to try and surround it on 3 sides. And over here, my Hishbukraz Howlers and their Loch Morale are going to hold the line for as long as they're able. I'm going to go here against the Archers of Amrod with my Thrangsheik Wolfborn, try to rout them, try to free up some more of my forces, which I will successfully do, although I won't be able to rout the Archers, unfortunately. I'm going to be able to come in with another wave of reinforcements, but over here in the center, the breaking and the exhaustion is beginning to take its toll. And unfortunately, the Green Elves are going to rout what remains of my center. And now, more reinforcements coming in. Shield Bearers of Helivorn. I don't know if the Spearmen will come back. I did rout the Mytharan at some point as well. But you can see a lot of those footmen that I routed have come over here, and they're going to form another wave of reinforcements. And it's just, I just don't have the numbers to continuously do this. They get routed off. I try to chase them down, but unfortunately there's more enemies to deal with, pressing concerns at hand, and I just wasn't able to follow through and consolidate my victory against the House of Feyenoord. Now I'm really starting to pay for it. So, it's reasonably close. The Sons of Feyenoord I would certainly have been able to defeat if it wasn't for this big death ball of Green Elves. Yeah, more of my troops routing. The Ents showing up, causing fear. That's pretty well going to be the end of my troops, but it was a good scrap. I think if Richie was able to hold out a little bit better, maybe if he had some more numbers, certainly if he had the Hishbukraz Howlers, he would have had a lot of tar pits that would have kept the Elves of Assyrian busy. So if you are going to play as Tol-in-Gaurhoth, I recommend that you bring them. They're cheap, and they're dispensable, and they're irritating, which is everything you can ask out of a light infantry unit like this. My Gijek Scout has chosen being routed off here by a rear charge from the Ents, and that's all the resistance I'm going to be able to offer to Assyrian. I do still have some troops over here. Some cavalry. Unfortunately, my Wolfborn, my Thrangsheik warlords have been cut down. And it's almost total losses on my side. I think maybe I managed to regroup with a few of my troops. No, I think it's just a matter of destroying what remains of my howlers and finalizing this defeat for my army. So it was an interesting game. Let's take a look at some of the casualties here. Longfangs didn't do terribly well, but that's okay. They were fighting some really heavy-duty infantry. My Wargs did well. My Thrangsheik Wolfborn, look at that. 159 kills. Gijekskara's units, I kind of mismanaged a lot of my Wargs, but I still managed to get some decent kills with them. 90 off that unit isn't bad. My Wolf Guard did reasonably okay. My Laugskaras. Did I bring Laugskaras? Oh, this is my ally. Never mind. This is Richie. These are all his units then. So apply those comments to his army. He's got a high blood drinkers. Some of them did really well. His Longfangs did okay. My Thrangsheik Wolfborn did well. It's very similar. I had one unit of my Gijekskaras do well, and the other one was unfortunately mismanaged. Good kills on my trappers. Not so much on my Longfangs. My Longfangs, again, were fighting some really heavy-duty infantry. My Wolfguard did okay. 70 and 53 is about what you'd expect, I would think. Gijekskara's chosen. Almost identical. That's really weird. My Gijekskara's units almost performed identically well. My Howlers, look at that, 124 in those Howlers. The Howlers did very well for cheap infantry. Like I said, such a strong unit. My Warband got a few kills, but honestly they weren't really there to get kills. I was expecting to fight more cavalry and to need them for a cavalry fight to give myself an advantage and to give my Wargs an extra leg up. But it didn't end up playing out that way. A couple companies there of the Hisht Bukras, those are the Warg Javelins. They did reasonably well. The 31 is probably the unit I got killed off by being silly. 67 on the other one is good enough. Unfortunately, it just wasn't enough. We killed off a good deal of the Sons of Feyenoord. It says that they have like hundreds of units left, but honestly, look at this is the Sons of Feyenoord army here. Most of that is the Edain, and most of those are routing units that I wasn't really able to run down. And then the Gelion units were the really big threat here. But yeah, it's a fun battle. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you guys are excited about Silmarillion Total War. I've been working really hard on it, and I'm hoping to show you some new stuff in the future. I will be working on some new maps. We're going to take a little bit of a break in terms of adding factions for now. We've got 4 on the build, 2 Elven, 2 Orcish, and they need some time to be tested and refined against one another. So, yeah, really exciting. Hope you guys enjoyed this. I'll see you next time. Bye now.